to take a look at Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Marvel Legends line. Welcome once again to Wonder World Comics' review of classic toys from all the decades where toys were important. In the year 2000, Toy Biz Company came up with a really smart idea. It was a toy line called Spider-Man Classics. It was a Spider-Man action figure with a repacked comic book. The comic was a reprint of classic issues, and the toy inside the package was posed in a way to look just like the original cover of the comic book. 2 years later, it would launch a new line called Marvel Legends. Toy Biz went on to make the Marvel Legends for many years, but at a certain point, they got absorbed into Hasbro via different licensing issues. The outcome was the Marvel Legends name kind of took on a life of its own. And at that point was the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of people argue and disagree that technically the Marvel Cinematic Universe started with Blade 10 years before in 1998. However, most people now look at the Kevin Feige years as the time when the Marvel Cinematic Universe began. But let's just talk about Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Starting with this man, Iron Man. In 2008, the summer of 2008, Iron Man debuted. Originally released under a different studio, and then later Marvel was purchased by Disney and then absorbed into the Disney company. Nobody really knew what this line was going to mean. The figures that came out that year were of various scales. This Iron Man Mark I is clearly supposed to be Tony Stark in a modified, much larger armor. You could never fit a scaled Tony Stark in that armor, but to hold its place in the collection, I think it does pretty decently. You get definitely all the different Iron Man marks. I kind of separate them out by which ones look the most like the Iron Man used in the movie. And of course, at the end, you get the beginning of what would be the cinematic universe with Nick Fury, who, this is really my favorite Nick Fury figure, but he is completely out of scale with Tony Stark and most of the other figures. But I think it looks the most like Samuel L. Jackson. Not a lot of secondary characters came out. You mostly had Iron Man, Iron Man Mark I, Iron Man Mark II, Mark III, and then Ironmonger as characters to add to this collection. We're going to focus only on characters that resemble the cinematic universe for the purposes of collecting these figures and what they represent, no matter when they came out in the 11-year history of the cinematic universe. For Phase 1, 2, and 3, we're going to just focus on having one figure kind of represent the line for that movie and that era. So, almost as fast as Iron Man came out and broke box office records that summer, we knew we were getting something special. They had already announced that there was going to be an Iron Man 2 in the works, and they had already announced that they were going to start something brand new and exciting, which was a cinematic universe. So now you can see we're just 3 movies into this cinematic universe, and all of a sudden we have Iron Man, Black Widow, Thor, and Hawkeye. And we already knew that there was a movie called Captain America coming out immediately after this. So when we actually got Captain America, you would have pretty much your entire Avengers. I'm leaving out, of course, the Hulk, because we're going to talk about that in a second. So when the Hulk figures were released, they were in no way, shape, or form part of the Marvel Legends line. The scale was completely off. They were actually about 4-inch figures of the humans, and you had these big 8-inch monstrous Hulks that would not fit in any of these kind of scale replicas. So you have to wait until several years later when you get the Banner figure, and you would get a Hulk figure to represent the full Avengers by the end of Phase 1. A lot of these Marvel Legends were released by Hasbro, a mix of Toy Biz and Hasbro, but for the most part, Hasbro has taken over the line and really up the game. Here is the very highly articulated Captain America figure, and as you can see, this is the spitting image of Chris Evans. A lot of times in toys, you would have multiple variations of a figure were used to kind of get you to buy multiple figures. Marvel Legends really, they do play the variation game, but they also include lots of different versions within the same packaging. Take, for instance, Captain America here. With a simple pop of the head and a pop-on of an alternate head, you would get the character in a totally different head sculpt. This concludes our series review of Phase 1 Marvel Cinematic Universe Marvel Legends action figures by both Toy Biz and Hasbro. Join us next week when we have Phase 2 of the Cinematic Universe and a few surprises along with it. If you want to find our entire inventory of Marvel Legends, check out WonderworldComics.com/Amazon for all of our toy inventory, as well as we put some of our figures on eBay at Wonderworld Comics and Toys.